Alright, so today we are on lesson 9.5. Today we are going to be factoring trinomials. Okay? This is going to be a little bit of review from yesterday. We're just going to take it to the next step. So, if we go ahead and look at our warm-up. Yeah, I'll take that warm-up. So, how do we go ahead and solve number one? We should be able to explain this. These are our warm-ups. This should be review. What will I do? What should be the first thing I'll do? Guys, I'm aware that we won't get through it, I think. Okay, so we distribute our 2. So I'd still have negative 6 plus 2b minus 18. And then we would combine my terms. So I'm going to minus 2d. Negative 6 minus 18 is negative 24. Alex? And we would end up dividing by 6. We would get d equals negative 4. Okay, number 2. You guys get to do whichever method that you are comfortable with. Whether it's just like I sit here and I just go across, or if you are more comfortable with that box method. I'll show the box method today because yesterday I did the other one. But if you did box method, it's just like 2y plus 3 and y and 5. Which means 2y times y is 2y squared. 3 times y is 3y. 2y times 5 is 10y. 3 times 5 is 15. Then you just do your like terms. I'd have 2y squared. I have a 3y and a 10y is 13y. And I have plus 15. Alright, last couple on this warm-up, factoring. So, when we factor these, what am I going to do? Yesterday's homework should have been fairly easy once you get the hang of it. When I go to do this, I know I'm going to factor it down to here. Since a, my first term is x squared, I'm just going to have x and x. But this is the part that was fairly easy. If I look at c and it's a negative, that tells me I know I'm going to be adding and subtracting. Because the only way to get a negative is to multiply a positive and a negative. Then, I have to look for my factors of 18. And that'd be it. Since we were subtracting, we're finding the absolute value between the two factors. That would give me 7. The absolute value between the two would be 2 and 9. And then knowing which one is which, it's pretty simple. You just look at your b term, and because it's a negative 7, my larger factor is my negative number. So when it's a negative on the c term, we know we're going to add and subtract, find the absolute value between our factors. And whatever b is, if b is negative, then your larger factor is negative. If b was positive, your larger factor was positive. We did the same thing on b. We'd have x and x. But on this one, we have a positive for c. So that means we're either going to multiply 2 positives or 2 negatives. We find out which one by looking at b. b is a negative, so I'm going to be using subtraction there. We find the factors of 6. Whoops. So I'd have 1 and 6, 2 and 3. And on this one, we get to add them together to find out which one. So I have to get to -5, so I'd use 2 and 3. Any questions on how we did factoring? Oh, I didn't even see the y.
You got it wrong. We were all asking questions.
I did. I was like, I want to know if you have a question. I can do that. I didn't see that. Okay.
Does it matter which order the 2 and the 9 go in on number 4?
So, well, as long as the positives with 2. So if you said x minus 9, x plus 2, that's okay. That doesn't matter. So today we're going to factor trinomials. If you think about what we've been doing, everything's going to be coming together now. Okay? We first started with adding and subtracting polynomials. We multiplied them. And then yesterday, we went ahead and we were working on factoring our polynomials. Well, now today we're going to take this and now we're going to solve the equations for them. Okay? So our first one is n squared minus 7n minus 30 equals 0. And you see that our equation is actually, our trinomial is set to 0. First thing we have to do is factor. So, what are we going to do? How? This is just like our warm-up. Okay? So we're going to put in here, if we look at our a term, which was n squared, we're going to have our 2 n's. Now, we look at our c term. Am I going to have a positive, negative, positive, positive, or negative, negative? I'm hearing positive, negative, or negative, negative.
Positive.
Katie, which one is it?
Positive, negative.
Why?
Because a negative has a positive is a negative.
Okay, our c term is negative. The only way we get a negative is by multiplying positive and negative. So I can go into my factoring right now and say n plus, n minus. Then we have to find our factors of 30. So I show all my work on this every time. I'm not trying to do it mentally and just come up with that. So I just do 1 to 30, 2 to 15, 3 to 10, 4, 5 to 6. And that's all of them. Now this is the part we got to remember. Because we are subtracting, just like yesterday, because this c term is subtracting, I'm finding the absolute value between my two factors. So like between 1 and 30, that's like 29. I know this is great, it's light, you can't see it as well, but it's okay. 13, that's 7, that's 1. And which one are we looking for? 7. Because that is my b term. So when I found 7 for the absolute value, that tells me we're using 3 and 10. We go back to our b term because it's a negative 7. Which one of my factors is the negative number? The 10, the larger one. So plus 3 minus 10. That is exactly what you did all 40 problems on yesterday, right? Wasn't too bad. I didn't think so, at least.
You just have to do it.
However, today we're saying we have to solve. So if we go back 2 days ago, when we said everything equal to 0, that is what we're going to do today now. So I'm going to take n plus 3 equals 0, because my whole equation equals 0. And so n obviously is going to equal, we subtracted 3, n equals negative 3. I'm going to take my other equation, n minus 10, and what is it going to equal? Okay, so then we have n equals 10. So right now my final answer, now remember, these are called our roots, or they can be called zeros. So it's roots or zeros, same name. What do those represent? We haven't started graphing this yet, but what do those represent? Does anyone remember what these two zeros represent, Alex? Yeah, there are x-intercepts. Perfect. Oh, Derek Head?
Yeah.
Science with Keith. So, perfect. We have not started graphing these yet. But these represent the x-intercepts for our parabolas that we will graph. And you'll see how we get to them. They look really confusing on how to do them, but once you learn all this, it becomes simple. First one's -3. So I'm going to say, like, here's a -3. There's a 10. So we know that's going to be the x-intercepts. When this ends up getting graphed, our parabola is going to go through there and through here. We're going to see when you guys have seen graphs like that, that's kind of how they're knowing how to do it. Obviously, how far down, we'll have how far down we go. So there's going to be more to it. But right now, we're just hitting this piece by piece. All right, so if I look at the next example, what's the problem in this one? Maddie? Okay, we don't have this equal to 0. First thing we want to do is always write this in standard form. So I'm going to add 23. First thing I'm going to do is add 23m to both sides of my equal sign. So my new equation is m squared plus 23m plus 22. Now I'm going to kind of let you guys know, today's assignment, a lot of the examples we're going to do, the numbers are just going to start getting huge. I don't really love that, but they're going to give us really large C's. So it's going to take just a little bit extra thinking. But as long as we follow our steps, it's not difficult. So go ahead, I'm going to pause my video, work with your neighbor, see if you can factor this first, and then we'll solve. If you want to go ahead and solve it for 0, do that as well, and I'll check with you. So I set up m to m. Remember, because our C term is positive, I'm going to be either 2 positives or 2 negatives. Since our B term is positive, we use 2 positives. So m plus, m plus. You should have found your factors of 22.
22.
Of 23.
What?
No, 22.
Yeah,
I'm right. 22, because 22 is your C term. Right? Nope. So you always factor your C term. C term was 22. Now, because we're adding, we have to get it so our 2 factors have to equal 23 when you add them. Obviously, we would use 1 and 22. And because we're using addition, it does not matter which order you put them in. So m plus 1, m plus 22. Now that's only the factoring part. We now have to go down and say m plus 1 equals 0. M plus 22 equals 0. And we solve for each one. So the first one, you minus 1, m would equal -1, m would equal -22. Our final answer is -1, -22. Those are our zeros, which would be our x-intercepts on our parabola. Okay. The next one looks, yes?
So when you have your 2 intercepts, the bottom, when you're graphing, you have 2 negatives, do they go on the same side?
Mm-hmm. So this would just look like one's at -1, this one's at -22. So our parabola would just be on that left side. Alright, find the zeros of the function and factor first. This one looks a little bit different, but there really isn't anything different. Just when it says the function of x, so we're trying to solve for x, that just means this is 0. So I like to rewrite this so it's in order. X squared minus 14x minus 51 equals 0. We follow all the same steps. We factor this. X and x. Because C term is a negative here, we know we're going to add and subtract. Because the C term's a negative, we have to add and subtract, which means when I take my C term and I find my factors, I'm finding the absolute value between the two. I'm going to be subtracting. So my factors of 51 are 1 to 51, and that's 50, so I know that's not equal my number. My has to end up equaling B. 2 doesn't go into this. 3 goes in 17 times. That one works. Is that the only one? Well, that one works. The difference, the absolute value between 3 and 17 is 14. Which one is the positive number? 3 is the positive. 17 is your negative.
But that would be negative. Oh, yeah, it's negative.
Remember, the reason, okay, so hold on. The reason we know it's this way, okay, so we had C as a negative, so we had to find the absolute value, and it's a positive negative, right? We're good there. When you decide which term goes to which, because 14 was negative, our B term, since this is negative, you want your larger of the two terms to be negative. So we made negative 17. If we wouldn't have, when you distribute this, it would have came out to a positive 14x. So you always look at your B term. That will tell us a lot of information. Doesn't seem like it. Always kind of seems like that middle child. You're like, oh, I forgot about him. But no, they're actually important. I'm the youngest one. I'm the favorite. Oh, I forgot about it. All right, so questions? Hold on. What? Yep. So if, well, here is positive, positive. We'll see if we get one. Alright, so we still have to solve this. So, you still have to say x equals, whoops. You still have to say x plus 3 equals 0, which would mean x is negative 3. X minus 17 equals 0, which means x equals positive 17. It's pretty much coming out to just the opposite. The only time it's not going to is if you'll see when we get these to be, right now we're working with our A terms only 1, like x squared. We will see where we'll have 2x squared, and then you're going to have to do some division. So I have x equals negative 3, 17. Alright, so looking at this one now, I'm still going to ask you to solve on this, but what's the problem here? Yeah, look, we've already worked with this. This is like what we did earlier on. So now we're just combining it all. The first thing I have to do is I have to solve for this. So I'm going to have to go ahead and say p times p is p squared, and then p times 19 is 19p. However, it was not equal to 0. We need to write this in standard form. So instead of saying p squared plus 19p equals negative 34, well, I'll write that first. I'm going to have to skip a step for you yet. I'm going to add 34, just like we did in the last problem. So now, p squared plus 19p equals 34. Okay? Huh? Why did I write equals? Plus 34. And we'll make this all equal to 0. Okay. we do the same thing every single time. This is how this should become a really easy routine. That's why we have to do so many problems. C term is positive. Because C term is positive, I'm either going to add or use two negatives. So I'm going to have P and P. To decide whether I use positive or negatives, we look at our B term. B was positive, so we have to use our positives. We just find our factors of 34. And because this was a positive on our C, we're going to be adding them. So we have to add till we get to 19. If I look for my terms, there's 1 and 34. Well, that adds to 35. It's even, so 2 and 17. 2 plus 17 is, so there's our term. So because both of them are positive, it doesn't matter our order. And we solve now. P plus 2 equals 0. P plus 17 equals 0. When we subtract, we find our zeros to be -2, -17. Honestly, how do we feel on this so far? Pretty good? Any big questions about the basics? Huh? I would just put it in like from smallest to largest. Because then you think about when you're graphing it. Oh, I guess that's backwards. Right?
Yeah.
I usually try to put it smallest to largest because when you graph it, go that way. If you don't, it's not going to count the wrong. Okay, we are really close to done. Let's just look at this. This one, it's not hard. There's one thing that I would do different though, but I'll show you. So, find the dimensions of the shape. Okay, so I need to mainly find out what my height is and what the base of that triangle is. The only thing they told me was that the area equals 78 square yards. How do we find the area of a triangle? Yeah, length times, so area is length times height divided by 2. So we are going to do that. Now, I like that you said that one, okay, because this is why. I always learned that the area of a triangle is half times base times height, which is the same thing, except what we're going to be doing, we really don't want to mess with the fraction. And if we set it this way, it's easier to solve, and you'll see why. So to solve this, I know that my area is 78, and actually I'm going to write it the other way, just because I like having my equation first. My length was x plus 20. My height is just x. We're dividing it all by 2, and it equals 78. One of the first things I'm going to do on this side is I don't want to be dividing by 2. We don't want to mess with that fraction. So how do I get rid of the 2? Maddie? Let's multiply this whole side by 2. So I have to multiply this side by 2. Those would cancel out. And this would end up being x plus 20. That's still x. And 78 times 2, 156. What do you think you're going to do first? Zoe? Huh? Nope. We can't subtract the 20 because even though it's x plus 20, that's timesing an x. So I can't just subtract. Yeah, we want to factor this out. So if I do that, this will become x squared plus 20x. And now that we're to this point, you should say, well, that looks familiar. We know how we do this. This is exactly like all our other problems. I need to set it equal to 0, though. So we're going to subtract 156. And I'd have x squared plus 20x minus 156 equals 0. Everything's going to stay the same. I'm going to show my work over here because I'm not in that room. But I'd have x and x for my a, it's x squared. It's negative 156. So I'm going to have a positive and a negative. And here comes the fun part. These are the bigger numbers. When I find the factors of 156, remember, because we were using the negative, I'm finding the absolute value between the two. So I'm going to list as many factors as I have to. 1 and 156. Well, that absolute value is only like 155. So I'm going to keep moving. I have 2 and 78. Well, that's only 76. Does 3 go into this?
Yes.
3 and 52. Well, that's 49. We're getting closer. What else would come in? 4. Okay. 4 and 39. That difference is 35. 5 can't because it's not ending in 0. 5 can 6.
No. 6 and 26.
26.
Yeah.
And the absolute value between 6 and 26? 20. Which one? Let's see, who had the question? Katie.
Yes.
I'm going to pick on you.
Alright.
Okay, so which one's going to be the positive and which one's going to be the negative?
The positive's going to be 6 and the negative's going to be 26. No, not that.
No.
It's not that.
Other way around.
It's negative 6 and positive 26.
I think the bigger number is positive.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
B
B
is
is positive.
Oh.
B is positive, so 26 is positive. Good. Now, we still have to set these equal to 0. So this would be x equals 6, x equals negative 26. Before we move on, because we still haven't answered the question. The question's asked for the dimensions. If we look at this, though, I have x plus something, and this one is actually x. Can my measurement be negative 26 yards? No. So I know this one is not going to work in this equation. So x can only equal 6. So one of my terms, I could say for my answer, my height equals 6 yards. The base was x plus 20. So you would say 20 plus 6 equals 26. And you would have to say 26 yards. Now, could we have multiple answers sometime? Yes. If the height, the base would have been like x plus 30, well then we would have been able to use the x minus 26, the negative 26, because it would have came out to a positive answer. You're just going to have to see you have more than one. You have to make sure it makes sense in your equation, what's happening. All right, last problem. This one, I will say the only problem on it is it gets a little bit number. But it says a community center is building a patio area along the 2 sides of its pool. The pool is rectangular with a width of 50 and a length of 100 feet. Patio area have the same width of each side of the pool. Write a polynomial that represents the combined area. So this is the nice thing. They went ahead and they drew the picture for us. If they do not have a picture, please draw the picture. It helps visualize it. If this is the length, I have to write a polynomial for the combined area. So, what is my length going to be? What is the length of my pool? 100 plus x, or x plus 100. Sure. So, x plus 100. Because the length was 100 plus the x. And we're finding area, so we're going to times that by x plus 50. And they want us to write a polynomial that represents the combined total. So we can go ahead and do that. We would say x squared plus 50x plus 100x plus 5,000, right? 100, yeah, 5,000, right? It's okay. I forgot a line earlier. Counting for other people. Rich people.
I mean, that's nice.
So, here's A. We've now represented with our polynomial. X squared plus 150x plus 5,000. On B, the combined area of the pool should be 8,400 square feet. How wide? Oh, man. Okay, so now I have to take this equation, x squared plus 150x plus 5,000 equals 8,400. And what will you do first? No, not 5,000 from both sides.
I can get two.
What? Subtract 8,400. Yeah, because we want to set our polynomial equal to 0. So we are going to subtract the 8,400. X squared plus 150 x. Oh, that's going to be what? Negative 2,600?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That sounds right. Yeah, we'll call it good.
I could have a backup in case it breaks. Almost there.
Oh, shoot.
How'd you get 2,000?
Yeah.
Watch it never break.
It'd be. I'll get the number here. So.
Never mind.
Hold on, that's not the right one. I was just saying, we still have like 5 minutes.
Why do we have to have 5 more minutes? Because we won't have links.
I don't want to.
I'll tell you what we'll do. We're almost done with this. When I minus this, we would get negative 3,400. 5,000 minus 8,000 is 3,000 minus another 400, 3,400. Okay, we're going to do this kind of quick because I want to let you guys get started. I think you're doing well with this. But we still have to factor that. So I'd have x and x. Because c is negative, we're going to have a positive and a negative. And we would have to list out our factors of 3,400. So this could take a long time because it's a bigger number. So you're right. We could do like 1 and 3,400. And then the other nice thing that I should be able to realize is when I have 1.
Attention teachers and staff. Apologize for the interruption. The bell schedule was incorrect. We are correcting it now. Students, please go back to your first hour class until the correct bell rings. Thank you.
Alright, so we could keep going here. I'm gonna have to get it so when I have my absolute value, it's 150. So I could keep going with a ton of these, or I could also realize this could be 10, and that could be 340, or that could have been 100, and this could have been 34, just by factors. But none of those is giving me 150. Anyone have it yet? Did anyone find it? 20 and 170. Okay, instead of wasting your time going through, I know you guys could find the factors. It would take you a while. That's the problem. That's perseverance. But we get 20 and 170. Katie, we're trying again now. Okay, this was a negative number, so we have a positive and a negative, and we have to equal positive 150. Which one is going to be x plus? 170. Okay, make sure we set them equal to 0.
I'll never help you answer that question again.
Hold on, we're almost done. Okay. So you have to find the how wide. So it would have been 50 plus your x. Well, we won't use the negative 170 because that's going to give us a negative number. So 50 plus 20 is 70 feet is our final answer. All right, your homework. 50 because that's the width. Alright, so your homework is page 586, 4 through 40 even, 44 through 54 even, 60, 70, 72, 78, 80. That's a good